Hi, I'm Sophie from the Joyful Web, and welcome to another of our Joyful interview series where I'm having conversations with people in our network who I feel have something really interesting to say. And today I'm joined by Jez, who will introduce himself in a minute. Jez is a communications expert, and he and I have had some really interesting conversations around how communication impacts our experience of the world, actually, for want of a better way of putting it, and why that is extremely important right now, where we are bombarded with lots and lots and lots of very intense, often quite negative messages from all angles, and how we can ensure that we're not too much buying into the negative messages that we're receiving, and that we are also looking for a way to continue and even to flourish even in these quite difficult times. So today we're going to be talking about reframing the narrative, and what that means to us, and how you as the audience could maybe apply some of this, whether that's in your business or in your life as in general. So welcome, Jez.
Hello.
Hi. So first of all, could you just introduce yourself and explain, like, what is a communications expert?
My name's Jez. I run a business called Just Jez, and I'm constantly helping people to reframe their own narrative, because what I do is I help people to communicate in the virtual space using video and audio and media generally. It can be copy, but I specialize in video and audio.
Fab. Great. Okay, so let's just jump straight in. Reframing the narrative. What does that mean?
That's a very good ultimate question, isn't it? What does it mean? It means effectively dealing with, first of all, dealing with things that are going on, particularly at the moment internally, within ourselves, largely as a result of what's happening internally and what's happening externally. So there are a couple of ways I look at this. The first is, what are the kind of resistors? What are the things preventing us all from moving forward? And then the next is, how can we actually go about changing things for the better? Because if you think about it, one way of looking at it is we're always changing things. None of us, or very few of us, are in complete stasis, just completely stationary. We're always moving forward from day to day. And one of the issues about restriction, which most of us have been, is the tendency for quite a few of us is just to stop as if a rabbit in the headlights. And it's good to stop if, when you're stopping, you're actually giving yourself space. You're allowing yourself space. That's fine. But when you're just petrified, as I think a lot of people have been, that can be very debilitating.
Absolutely.
And so, part of what I do, and I know what you do, is to help people to move forward, understanding that that's often the situation we find other people in, and helping them to kind of, reframe the narrative for the future.
Absolutely. And I mean, it is the most, animal part of human beings, is that when we're in that sort of space of, like, existential crisis, essentially, we freeze, run, or fight. That's just the way that our brains are. And so you're right, we it's all about sort of stopping, pausing, but not in that space of fear, or maybe pausing in that space of fear, but looking for the way to move through the space of fear, so that you can find, maybe there's a lot of the time, there's even that sort of nugget of, like, gold in that moment that's like that occurs as like an epiphany or a breakthrough. And that's kind of what I think what you're saying is, that's sort of what you do, is facilitate those kind of breakthrough moments of actually finding a route that maybe you had never even thought of before, to creating something even in spaces that feel like there is no possibility for creation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of a good way of looking at this perhaps is thinking that you're kind of next to a door, and how willing are you to open that door, and open that door to the outside world. Now, of course, one of the issues with the whole pandemic issue is that there's been a lot of people telling you to shut the door. I'm really talking about something very metaphorical. You may be physically shutting a door on your house, for example, but that doesn't mean to say that you can't metaphorically open the door to people. And people are essential in this kind of situation where you're physically restricted. And one of the wonderful things about technology, as most of us are aware, is that you're able to talk. I think, again, it comes down to that's a really positive thing. What works against that, I've discovered, is often very small things in terms of the big issues. So technology itself. So what if you're having problems connecting on Zoom or something like that? How stressful is that? It can be very stressful. Just little things like that. So what do you do? How do you deal with that? And I often find it's the little things and the way you deal with the little things on a moment by moment basis that can help you with the much bigger questions, like how do we move forward together? Yeah. How can we move forward as people who know each other, whether we're friends or colleagues or clients, prospects, and particularly in business? Yeah. Because business is, as far as I'm concerned, quite a touchy-feely thing, you know.
Wow, it was in Brighton, I think.
But no, it is. I mean, it's about relationships. Well, it's about building relationships and on either side. So whether you're actually selling something officially or you're buying something, it's about building and building trust and building on that trust, constantly improving the relationship. And it's the same with personal relationships as much as it is with business relationships. That's kind of what I mean about touchy-feely, woo-woo thingy. Yeah. But it's not. It is purely in every business transaction is a relationship. Absolutely. And that is pretty much, taken.
And I think that's a really good point, actually, is once in this situation, what the most sort of, I don't want to use the word successful because it implies like it's better than, and when I use it, I mean it like there's been an objective and that has been met, because I really think language is important at this time, and the last thing I want is to make anyone feel like they're not doing enough, like they're perfect, you're perfect just as you are. But those business owners who I've experienced who've become stuck, one of the most powerful ways that they've reframed the narrative and moved forward is by asking their audiences or their customers what they actually want right now. And that might be something completely different from what those people or businesses have historically been offering. But the fact that they're in that dialogue and talking around what they've given on a more, maybe even a more emotional level, or like hidden benefits that they've given that they maybe didn't think of, asking that question and getting that response gives them more of an idea of how they might create something that people are really looking for right now, even if it's not what they thought they were creating this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's part of the whole talking thing. And very specifically, as I think probably just to expand on your point a bit, it's one of the things that's important to do at every stage of the journey.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you just met someone in business or whether you're actually moving on, and regardless of whether you're face to face, as it were, virtually or otherwise in the future, particularly, or whether you're actually marketing as such, so you're preparing a message and going out to effectively an invisible audience, and actually asking questions is the most important thing to do, because if you don't ask and you don't listen, you don't know what your customer base needs, particularly at this time. Yeah. So I couldn't agree with you more. And that is a really good, effectively a starting point for reframing the narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And I find anyway that that's also a very powerful way for me to move through my mental blocks, which are all about me and, my fears and my expectations. And if I can find a way to get out of that, like to open the door, to use your metaphor, to a new perspective, then it stops giving all of my fears so much power, because I'm coming out of myself a bit more and actually connecting with people. And technology provides a fantastic opportunity to do that. And yeah, I mean, what have you had to reframe your narrative at all with your business at all since this has all kind of happened?
Well, yes, in a number of ways. The first thing is in terms of output, because quite a lot of what I do is actually produce things.
Mm-hmm.
So I produce content, which is communications content for some of my clients. And of course, I'm limited in terms of the quality. The best way and the most effective way is just to take a conversation which you've got on Zoom or Skype or whatever communication software you're actually using, meeting software, that kind of thing, and then turn it into a piece of content that people can consume.
Hey.
Indeed. Precisely. So, but the quality might have go down a bit, but the message is really, really clear. And the way that I've worked has changed because of it. For example, I've got a client who was a little bit shy of doing any video content at all. They're a business coach, and particularly at the moment, it's very important for them to, prove their difference, if you see what I mean, and to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't like the idea, was very uncomfortable with effectively hosting their own vlog. So what I did is I hosted it for them. So that they just guide them into the conversation, and then they're just off. They were just rocking. So that's quite a different thing from the kind of thing that I've been doing before, because that was all done as a conversation on Zoom, but produced as a piece of content, edited and topped and tailed with branding and that kind of thing, and a little bug on the top and that kind of stuff. But it required a bit of thought beforehand and a bit of brand naming, if you see what I mean. To create this thing that's worked really well. It's going out on LinkedIn, getting good engagement, and that's a good example of the sort of stuff that I'm doing at the moment.
And I think that is a really pertinent point, because actually, there are a lot of people who are doing the same thing. Like, there's only a certain amount of jobs in the world, really, no matter how many ways you frame that. But what there isn't more than one of is you or me or anyone who's watching. Like, there's only one of us, and actually now feels like the best time ever as a business owner to step out and be vulnerable and share ourselves for who we are, because we are the most unique offering that our business has. And once you take away all the kind of fancy lights and the all the different, I'm like not a video expert, but all of the different kind of effects that you can put on a video, all the different shots, all the different wow them with the imagery, and you just have the content, then actually that can be really powerful.
It's very powerful. It's interesting what you were saying about being vulnerable. I kind of sort of extend that as well. I don't think you need to be any more than you are normally. Okay. Because it is extraordinary how different we all are. Even if we're just saying, yesterday I went to the shops and bought some peas. Mm-hmm. The way you say things, your expressions, the whether it's facial, vocal, army-fied stuff, whatever it is, effectively defines how you're relating, what you look like. And so trying to give too much of yourself, I think you don't really need to, particularly in the business space.
Yeah, I think it really...
You can just say what it is that you've got to offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends a lot, because for the kind of businesses that we work with, sharing their essence is really important, because mm-hmm. their essence is what created their business in the first place. Mm-hmm. But then, that's not going to be the case for especially for bigger businesses and corporates. It would be completely inappropriate. So it really, really depends on who the person is and what their business is. But one thing that is true for all of them, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, what we have traditionally thought was important, like all of the pizzazz that, people have spent a lot of money on in the past, strip that away and just have the message delivered by a human being,
Yeah.
it has even more impact. And it's kind of mind-blowingly simple, actually. Like,
Totally true.
communication is just that. It doesn't need all of the flash. Like, and it's
Absolutely and totally. And I've seen some very powerful stuff delivered by quite creative organisations, done purely from home, using the personalities that are within the organisation. And personalities are bright and beautiful.
Absolutely. Well, I think that is a really great note to end on. Do you have any other kind of key points that someone who's watching this could go away and implement immediately if they're looking to reframe the narrative?
Yeah, I think as an exercise in helping to reframe the narrative, try something really, really simple. Get onto Zoom or something like that, as if you were just talking to someone, except it's just you on your own, and record yourself a story of the day. Just tell a little story of the day in no more than 1 minute.
I love it.
And that will help you to focus and clarify your message.
Yes, I love that. And if you want to share your story of the day with us, please do. We would love to see it. Thank you very much, Jez. It is always a pleasure to talk to you and hear your insights. So thank you for coming on and joining me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure as ever.
And thank you, everybody who's been watching, for your time. And we hope that you have got some useful nuggets of how to reframe the narrative. Please do let us know in the comments below. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.